Welcome to my studio. This is video number 12. And in this video, we're going to draw a kind of complicated little root system here. Looks like some driftwood. My wife took this photograph in Yellowstone at one of the hot springs there. And you can see it'd be kind of a complicated little object to draw by itself, but when you put this grid system in use, it makes it a lot simpler. So if you're ready to get drawing, let's go. Okay, I've created my grid system here. I've got a 9 by 6 5/8 inch area right here. I've cropped this photograph a little smaller, and I've scaled that up to a 10 by 13.5. We talk about how to do that in video number 4, and I believe video number 9 also. But I've sketched it in lightly here to save us some time, but I'll go through the process with you here. I just picked an arbitrary point. You could pick anything on here. Just make sure you're in the right square. And although it looks complicated, it's really not that complicated. If you think of it in terms of just one square at a time, you don't have to worry about all this other stuff. Just get this one square drawn in, excuse me, and then make sure that your next objects in the next square, where it passes through one square into the next one, make sure they line up. But you're only dealing with one square at a time. So I started up here at this point right here, just guesstimating that it's about there. It's about a third of the way in on this square right here. And so I came down and then again down here, and then it intersects this bottom square about a third of the way in. So I just came down right there. You just follow that line down, and same with right here. And then you've got a piece. Now, one thing to do, and this helps out a lot, is try to get your big shapes in first. Don't worry about all these little branches coming off at first. And the big shapes on this drawing are this big branch that comes down here, and it connects to this piece right here, which again comes down here, branches off like that, and then there's like a separate piece right here, this light color. And so if you get those in first, and then go back and start adding your little branches and all the little fine details, it'll make it a lot simpler. And so basically that's how I treated this whole drawing. Again, finding all your different little main branches, and then going back and putting in the small ones. And again, it doesn't have to be precise, because nobody's going to be measuring it with a ruler. It just needs to look right. And so I'm going to skip ahead now a little bit to where we start shading this, and save us a little bit of time, because it's the same process. You use that for all the features of this driftwood. So I'm going to start up here and with a number 3 Derwent pencil, and I'm just going to put in a kind of a medium value, and we'll just shade that in like this. I want to stay away from this edge right here a little bit, because it gets a lot of light. The light is coming in from this direction here, coming that way. So I'm just going to put a little arrow there, remind me of which direction that light is coming in. And I'm going to run my pencil lead down here. Some of these areas now are going to get a lot darker, but for right now we just want to get in some value in here. Don't worry about if you go over an area that's going to be highlighted, because you can always go back in and use the kneaded eraser or the pink pearl eraser, whichever one, and pick those out. So let's see here, let's start to blend a little bit here with this blending stick. And again, like I did in one of the other videos, if you have room, sometimes it's kind of difficult because it gets kind of tight, but if you can kind of go, like I was shading this way, I was putting the graphite in this direction, which is the direction that the branch runs, but now I'm going across that and kind of putting a little curve to it like that. It helps to give the illusion that it's a round surface and not just a flat surface. Okay, same way, now this one right here is going to be, doesn't really matter on this one because it's going to be so dark you're not going to be able to tell that it's got that round, you're just going to have to, your mind will actually kind of fill that information in when it recognizes what this is. And let's see, this one back here, this is going to be quite a bit darker also, but I'm just going to, again, I'll put a little darker area right there so I know that it's crossing behind that. There's two separate things right there. Just to remind myself of that. And get it down here. This is a fairly smooth paper. A very little tooth, or what they call, tooth is what they refer to in roughness. Very little roughness, very little tooth in this paper, so it's quite easy to blend with it. Again, it's going to be so dark you're not going to see these contour lines here. And let's see, we come all the way down, we'll just keep coming down here. There's a little line I missed right there. Again, that's the only drawback to doing the grid is you have to be aware of where these lines are, and you want to take them out before you shade over that area, because then you have to erase it, and it makes you have to do that over again. And let's see, let's go up here. I'm just going to put in this base coat, then we'll jump ahead a little bit because it's the same process. You don't need to see me shading all this stuff. It's the same repetitive process here. Now this one I'm going to start to go across the grain there. Give that roundness feel. Because it's light enough that you would see some of these lines, some of these marks. My voice is cracking today. For some reason, it sounds like that old cowboy star, Andy Devine, used to be. For you young kids, that's probably, you don't remember him, but the older folks will. Okay, and then this one right here. Now there's an area on this one. There's an area on this part of the driftwood that's very light, so I'm going to just kind of even keep the graphite out of there if I can. It comes down here like this, and there's some up there, and then it's about half of that right there. So I'm going to stay away from that edge a little bit. Yeah, just like that. And then there's a piece that comes up here. Let's go this way. And it's gonna be pretty dark. And then it's very light right out here in the end, so I'm just gonna leave that by itself. This piece that comes down through here is right here. I wouldn't suggest, if you're just starting out drawing, I wouldn't suggest taking one this complicated. Start with something a lot simpler. and get used to this, using this grid. Even using it on my paintings now, just to help me get the right proportions. And let's see what comes down here. It's so easy to get lost in this stuff. I'm going to figure out where you're at, what branch you're on, and even with the grid, it can get a little complicated. I'm not the first one to, this grid idea is not my invention. I mean, this has been around for centuries. Some of the old masters used to do it. There's nothing to be, it's not cheating or anything like that. There's nothing to be ashamed of about it. They used to do it because it saved them time. It's not that they couldn't draw, it just saved them time. And this branch right here, I'm going to stay away from the outer edge of it because that's getting some light that's coming in from this direction here. It's hitting that part of the branch right there. Actually, I think that branch is a little bigger. Let's bring it up here like that. And we'll just shade underneath there. And then it's dark down here. Okay, as you can see, I've gone in and darkened some areas. I started to get some separation between the different branches, showing which one is overlapping the other one. And I could still do more of that. But right now, I think I'm going to move down to this area down here. And do the same thing, same process. And I'll start to add in the shadows underneath here too, which will give it some more dimension. Okay, I carry this down, and a lot of the shadowing, or a lot of the detail in this area down here is going to be defined by the dark areas that it sits against. And so I'm going to need to start putting in the shadows here on the ground. And some of the background, like over in here, places like that, although they're very light, they still define this real white area here. And same way up here. So start doing that now. I'm just going to start over here. And again, I've got a 9B pencil. And I want to take out a few of these lines here. Right there. And just kind of use the broad side of the pencil here to put in that. There's not much detail in that. It's pretty dark. The only detail you really see is a little highlight, little bumps of things that stick up. And I can, some of these light areas, I can pick that out with a kneaded eraser. And I'm going pretty dark with that because it doesn't really have any detail in it. I'm kind of varying the direction of my pencil lines here. It gives it some texture. And let's see, there's a line that goes across there, and then it kind of comes over here and in there. And it's kind of And let's see, there's another area right through here. I'm going to leave this area right here kind of white for right now because there's some real light stones and stuff in there, and I want to kind of indicate that. So just sort of, and I'm using this dark area here to define this shape right there. I want a good crisp line there. Some of it I can blend it in a little bit underneath there. But a fairly crisp line where you've got light area and dark area meet. And then there's some area up here that is kind of a continuation of this area. There's a branch that comes off of here and it goes out this way. Kind of comes, let's see, it's about in there. And I'm going to indicate that, just use my smudge stick here. Now this shadow kind of defines this area in here. There's some brush or something right back here. It's real light. It's got a lot of lines that I'm just going to kind of indicate it right there for right now. And let's see, there's a shadow that goes across here. And then it comes over here. Like that. And I think that's it. I don't know what that is. I don't think that's a shadow. I think it's a ledge like they have right here. I don't think that's a shadow there. There's a little bit of shadow over here. I think it's caused by this part of the branch sticking out there. Okay, let's see what we got here. Now I can start, like there's a branch that comes down here, and I don't think I indicated that. It comes down there and comes up here. And see, I think it goes like this. A little bit of a shading in there. Okay, now we've got quite a bit going on here. I still need to get some definition between, like for example, this area right here. There's a little white area right there that kind of helps define that. And as you can see, we've got quite a bit of detail already in here. Now I can go back and darken some of these areas. I think I'll get this a little darker right through here. It's darker than the redwood around it, but it's not as dark as that shadow area there. So see here. There's these little areas where light peeks through and stuff like that, you know, that you really want to pay attention to those because they help define the shapes. Okay, I'm going to erase out some of these construction lines here, and then we'll start to work on some of the background. I'm back, and I've taken out most of my grid lines here because I'm going to do some of this background, but I'm just going to put in a kind of an overall tone because I don't want a lot of detail in the background because this is the focus of my picture right here, but I want some graphite back here so I can erase out the highlights and catch these highlights. You don't really see them when your background is a white page, so I need to add a general tone. And before I do that though, I'm going to darken a few of these areas right up in here, right through here, and some of the places that it's really dark. And so let me just do that a second here. And I'll just kind of do that. I'm catching this one right down through here right now. There's a little branch off there like that. Again, here's an example where you can see the darkest dark against the lightest light. There's a sharp edge right there. So I want to have that right there, and kind of the dark sort of blends in with the medium tone right in here, mid-tone. I'll just come down like this. One thing I didn't mention is that you might get a piece of paper and lay down, and if you're going to be putting your hand down on top of the drawing, areas that you've already drawn. I've made a little device right here that I use for that, where kind of just a little bridge lets me rest my hand here without having it down on the paper, where you get oil from your hand and smear the graphite around. So these darker darks really add some drama to the picture. And let's see, that's right there. I want to add some real dark areas here in this shadow. shadows aren't always just one value. They're usually got multiple values inside of shadow. And you want to kind of keep an eye on that. Area right there, and this area right in here is real dark. You don't have to do all of it. A little bit more drama to the scene here. And it'll even be more dramatic when we get that value on the background and when we highlight some of the very edges. Just keep in mind that your sun is coming in from this direction. So. Okay, that's probably as much as I'm going to do right there with this piece. And I'm going to add some value in the background, some tone. All right, I'm going to take my graphite powder here, and I don't want it to be too dark, so I'm going to knock some of it off right there, and just a little value, add some tone back in the background here. I might indicate some of these patches of some of these streaks in the water here. We'll see. Not sure exactly what I'm going to do there yet. Just a little bit more here. You're going to see my grid lines here where I've erased them out. That's because this paper is not the highest quality of paper, and I had to erase pretty hard because, like I said before, I end up making these lines pretty dark so you can see them on the camera. But okay, so now we've got a base coat down. Now I can start to pick out some of these highlights. And let's see here. Take my kneaded eraser, or I could use pink pearl. If you don't have a kneaded eraser, pink pearl works good. Let me do that. Pink pearl. You can get these at any grocery store, any place that sells school supplies. There's some down here. There's an area right in there. And then this tree trunk down here, this whole face of it right here is getting sunlight. And a little bit in there. Right in there. And then some down through here. And that's about, there's a little bit in here, a bit more in there. There's some on this very edge right here. The sun's coming through there. There's a little bit of white patch back here. And let's see. It's real tempting to jump in here and start doing a bunch of stuff in that background, I'll tell you. I think I'll take and just pinch this kneaded eraser into kind of a little sharp edge right there, and you can kind of get some grass, some of those weeds sticking up there. So we couldn't do that if we hadn't put this base coat down. Let's see, I should need something over in here to kind of balance out that area. And I don't quite know what I want to put there. I might be going too far if I start taking out some of this white area right here. But I can always put it back in. Let's see, sometimes when you got a big broad area like this to lighten, sometimes the pink pearl works even better than the kneaded eraser. Just kind of some of these lines that you see going through here. Okay. At this point, I'm not really looking at the picture anymore. I'm just kind of looking, I'm not looking at the photograph anymore. I'm just kind of looking at the drawing to see what it needs. There's a little ridge that goes back up in here. Actually, it's a little shading that goes back up in there. And then this sort of smoky area back here is where the steam and everything is kind of covering up everything. You can kind of take your kneaded eraser and flatten it like this and pick out some areas. You're going to want to, it's going to be kind of blotchy, so I'm going to probably go back over it with a kind of just a plain cotton ball with very little graphite in it. And let's see, I've got one right here. Just kind of blend that a little bit. Get this out of the way here. The effect of some steam coming off of the water there. These mud pots are really interesting. They got a lot of them around in Yellowstone. Ones with different colors, and great place to get some photographs. I think that's where we're going to stop right now. Okay, that's video number 12. I hope you enjoyed it, and join me again for video number 13.